it's really confirming. They'll look for answers that confirm what their bias already is. But it's so important from an AI perspective to leave it to the AI. And what the AI will do is they'll come up with the most common themes. Here's the biggest issue. Here's the next biggest issue. And then from there, we can actually segment to see where the differences are.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time in this particular series, this is the live podcast series that we have changed the format. We used to do audio, but now we are doing the video as well. Typically, we meet either Thursday, Friday, or preferred spot is going to be Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern, the way we are meeting today. But sometimes we change things around if the guest is not able to make it. So for today, we have a guest, and I'll let him introduce himself. This is going to be a second episode with him, so I'm super excited in hitting the change management topic, which is he's passionate about. So, Tim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, thanks, Sam, and it's great to be back. And just from an introduction perspective, I've been working in the change field and supporting change for my entire career. My first transformation that I was part of it was an absolute disaster, and you learn so many great things from those those transformations that just don't make it. And it was one of those things where I wasn't actually part of the transformation team, but I saw what happened when there wasn't effective change management or understanding of change management. So worked my entire career, and as a company, I launched Prompta in 2008, just meaning readiness in Latin. And we needed to make a pivot as well, because what we were seeing was things weren't happening within the change management space. Projects, 25, 30 years on, weren't seeing higher success rates across, across the globe. So we set upon innovating and launching Prompt AI. So we launched Prompt AI in 2020, really to start to use better tools to drive change and transformation.
Yeah, so this is going to be very interesting. And by the way, guys, if you have not checked his first episode, I think we met 3 years back. So, things were very different back then. And now there are a lot of advancements from the AI perspective as well. So, Tim, obviously, I want to touch on, what all you are able to capitalize on that and how things have changed. But before we do that, if you're in the audience, mention your location. We would love to know where you are. Mention your LinkedIn URL so that we all can connect with you. We can provide the spotlight. But anytime during the episode, if you hear any of the comments or, if you have a story that you might be able to share from your experiences, those are the stories that we are looking to cover, and we'll ask those questions as well. So on that note, Tim, in the first episode we met, I'm going to do a little recap and refresher for you as well. So you hit on a lot of different things from the sponsor perspective. What is the responsibility of the sponsor? The SAP story that you had shared last time, I think that was the rank had changed from 1 to 4. They were category leader, and then they ended up being like number 4, something along those lines, just because of the ERP implementation. And, that's very common, especially if the implementations are going to be derailed. It's very, very, very common to see that. So in your experience, what has changed, let's say, in last 3 years, based on the advancements? What are the changes that you are seeing in the market? Is technology able to help improve the outcome? I doubt, but I'll let you speak, I guess.
Thanks. Sam, I'm just unpacking some of that. So one of the things when we think about change management is it's really slow to change the marketplace when it comes to change management. There's been a lot of investment in tools and templates and a lot of robust ways. Hey, we've always done this. And for change managers, what we're seeing across the board is they're really sticking in the resistance. They're resistant to change. They don't actually, you know, they know that what they do for good change managers actually does work, but it's very time consuming. It takes a lot of time to get to a strategy and a plan, and quite often they're creating things the way they've been creating things for the last X number of
Yeah.
years. And change managers are resistant to change. And part of that resistance is because what's happened is a lot of times they're not seen as a value add on projects.
Yeah.
They're seen from project managers and project teams as slowing down projects. They're seen as not allowing projects to get to the finish line, which always isn't, always isn't helpful, but sometimes that's the reality. And what we've seen over the last few years is, especially since 2000, is we need to start using better data, and we need to give change people better tools and have them use it though. And one of the things that we're seeing is that ability to use AI in order to understand the sentiment of what a stakeholder going through change actually wants and needs. And that's huge. And what what we can do with that is we can actually use AI to quickly create plans, to create strategies, to understand what the needs, the wants of our people that are going to be impacted by change, understand that, and then create change plans that work for them. And one of the things that has done is it's lowered the amount of resources required to manage change, because change people have better tools. And what we've started to see is when change people have better insights and better tools, they're seen as more value add. And uh, leaders are actually listening to them. Project managers are listening to them because they're providing great insight, not about, I believe that this is happening. No, this is happening. This is what your people want. And then once we find ways to get people on board and engaged, we can see them starting to participate and support the change. So it's a real ground shift as far as getting uh, getting change people to rethink their role and rethink how data and information can support them.
Okay, so very interesting. So we have some comments here, so I'll be touching on that. Thank you so much for joining, and Munshi, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right. Coming from Dallas, so thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions, please post them in the comment section. And guys, other people in the audience, please don't be shy. Mention your location as well as questions. We would love to cover them. So, Tim, going back to your conversation related to this whole idea of data and AI and providing the information in the hands of change managers. And based on our experience as well, and things might be different when you are dealing with the enterprises. They have slightly different ways of working, because when you are going to have, let's say, 5,000 people in the organization, and project team is going to be 200, 300 people, I don't know how many are going to be there in your projects, then the data AI might make sense. Let's say, but if you are going to be a small to medium sized business, you have maybe 200 people in the company and 20 people in the project. I don't know if the tools are still going to be helpful in those scenarios or not. So maybe describe, in these two situations when they should be relying on data AI to gather intel insight. Are these tools going to be meaningful even for the SMB customers? And if you have any sort of stories that you might be able to share, obviously those are my favorite ones.
Yeah, indeed. And it's just as relevant to the ERP with 5,000 to 10,000 and more people
Yeah.
as it is, with the smaller SMEs. So, for example, an organization, 300 employees.
Okay.
They were doing manufacturing in three different countries, and they were moving on to a new ERP system. They were looking to digitize their ways of working and their processes, and they were really looking to transform as an organization how they worked. And what you know, part of what we found, it's the principles are the same whether you're, whether it's that big organization or the 2 or 300. What we find is it's really important to use the data,
Yeah.
because we can get great data just by understanding the sentiment of people that are going through change. Instead of instead of building a really robust 60-page change strategy that nobody's ever going to look at, or a plan that you're building because you interviewed a few of the leaders. And sometimes leaders provide a good understanding of what their vision is, but they don't necessarily know what's happening inside the organization.
Yeah.
And what's happening for somebody in a day-to-day role.
Yeah.
So with this one example, what we were able to see by using AI was we were able to see the unique needs across that organization. We were able to see that from a data perspective, and where change was happening. We were able to understand what the needs were for each region. We were able to understand what was happening with specific departments and the amount of change that they had to go through, and what their key concerns were, where they
Yeah.
were going to need some support. So a big part of what we're able to do is, instead of casting this really broad net, one size fits all from a change perspective, what we can do is we can target the change to what people want, what they need, what's important to them. And with that, we're able to make sure that as we're engaging them on what's important to them, not just, here's something we think you need. And what's really important too is, for each one of the plants and each one of the locations, we can target it to what we're seeing for that specific spot, and really give both leaders in the change team the ability to focus on those areas. And what we're seeing is that the amount of churn that's required to make change successful goes way down. The engagement of people goes way up, because you're actually targeting them with things that they want and they need. And the other part that really does help is people managers have a better view to what their people need, as opposed to, hey, just this is very broad. So we've been able to do the same things within the smaller organizations, medium small organizations, and the big transformations. And it's been really great to see. One of the things we do see is some resistance to jump to doing new ways of change management.
Yeah, so very interesting. So, I'm going to mention two examples, I guess, from two different books, that I am reading right now. I don't know if you have read. So one of the books is Psychology of Money. Okay. And in that, they talk about one of the concepts is that most people are really poor at forecasting their own needs. Okay. So they don't know what they don't know. And that's where the problem starts. They are going to feel that, okay, maybe I'm looking for this version of change. And in the other book, I guess, Who Moved My Cheese is probably the classic book. In that they talk about, the different version of cheese. And, the cheese is constantly changing even for yourself, even when you look at your own version of cheese or the need that you are looking at. So now when you are going to be in this state, when you don't understand yourself, how can you be confident that if you are gathering the data or the information from these guys, they are saying that, hey, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that, this is what I need, but they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, it's true. And I, I love that. I'll have to check out the book Psychology of Money. And to me, one of the first things that comes to me is we've worked with health institutions and hospitals, and
Yeah.
and one of the most interesting things that was ever said was, they said we don't operate on ourselves, and we don't operate on our family. And this to me is really important, that need for some external change. one of the things that um, is really great about this forecasting of needs that you talk about is we often what we're often seeing when we start to work with organizations is that there's preconceived notions
Yeah.
about what needs to get solved. And you're right. Uh, Leaders believe that they understand exactly what the needs are and where they are from a current state perspective, but that's so often not reality. But what we're able to do, and this is so important, is we're able to come back and say, this is what the data is telling us. This is what's actually going on. This is the lived experience of your employees. This is what's happening for your employees within this plant. And what we're able to do is come back and have a bit of a discussion. And it's not from a place of blame or shame. It's new
Yeah.
data they didn't have. And to be able to present the data in a way that says you didn't know what you didn't know till you know it. So now we know it. What are we going to do about it? And it's so impactful, and it really does help to shine a light on what actually is happening within the organization and where do they need to move and where do they need to put energy. And
Yeah.
and we had one organization that had been trying to they had a transformation that didn't go well, and they called us in looking to try and figure out how did they get back to their position where they were before they had done this, and they had put it in themselves. And one of the biggest things that we saw was they were throwing resources and money at an issue that the workforce didn't care about. It wasn't important to them, but a specific leader believed that this was what was holding the organization back, and it was amazing for them just to sit back, not with us telling them, but with hearing from the data.
Yeah.
And if you think about a change manager, if once we can arm a change leader with that type of insight and information, they're really seen as a lot more credible and bringing something of value to the table. And we've seen where certain steering committees now have looked to add change managers back onto the steering committee, and make sure that they're understanding what's happening from a sentiment and a data perspective.
Yeah, so very interesting. So I'm going to mention some more comments related to the other book that I wanted to mention, right? So this is the Think Again from Adam Grant. I don't know whether you know him or read any of his books. He has written the other one as well, Hidden Potential, which is also extremely, extremely popular. Okay. So one of the things that he talks about in Think Again is there are three different biases. And what I'm really looking to see is if you have seen any sort of evidences where you are able to either detect these biases or able to do anything. Obviously, he is a social scientist and he does this for living, right? And he talks about these biases that they are prevalent, and I don't know how much can be done about that, right? So number one is obviously the easy one, which is the confirmation bias that everybody sort of understand. They kind of understand what is the meaning of confirmation bias, but I don't know if they truly and deeply understand that, right? And that's where the second or third bias comes in. And this is very, very, very important, with ERP conversations. The second one is desirability bias. And I don't know whether you have heard of this or not, right? In the ERP conversations, hey, I'm looking for easy to use platform. Whatever the hell that means. I don't know what that means. Okay. So that is and the third bias is even more interesting. Okay. And that is the I'm not biased bias. Okay.
Oh,
So three biases: confirmation bias,
yeah.
desirability bias, and I'm not biased bias. So now, given these three biases, have you seen any evidences? Because see, once you actually provide data, data actually fires back, to be completely honest, in my experience.
Yeah.
Because not
Yeah.
only they are biased, that is number one, but now you have data to prove, and they are trying to really justify that they are not wrong.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we are seeing I've never heard of the I'm not bias, but I love it. I absolutely love it because of course we all have bias. It's just it's it's normal. It's just important for us to understand what our specific biases are,
Yeah.
and it it uh, it it really is it really is so important to be able to present the data. So one of the things that we often see is on all transformations, but certainly ERP transformations too, is this is going to change the culture
Yeah.
of the organization, and it's so important to be able to come and share what the data is telling you, and doing it in such a way that you're not pointing fingers because they hadn't seen this before, but to be able to shine a light. And I'll share the one thing from a culture perspective. When we shared with an ERP, they were so proud of the work they had done from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective.
Yeah.
This organization, and it was absolutely amazing. One of the things that we were seeing was that um, female leaders within the organization felt they
Yeah.
didn't have a voice, and their voice
Hmm.
didn't matter, and it was only a great idea till one of their male colleagues shared it. And we know that this still happens within organizations, but this organization and these leaders were certain that they had dealt with these issues as part of their ESG, and they were so far ahead. But the data doesn't lie. Here's what we're seeing, and we're able to present it in such a way that there's no negotiation. There's no negotiation there, and really, really important to be able to look at something and say, here's what's really happening. Or we see it also when we start to dissect and look at different segments of the user community. So, for example, we were working with one organization, and they have manufacturing plants across the U.S. And when we start to see anomalies within the data, it's pretty obvious that something is going on that's different. And it can be an anomaly that's like, wow, look at this. And from a change perspective, maybe we don't have to go as deep in this area because of some of the things they're doing, and we can leverage at other places. But sometimes we also see that in this one situation, it was in Kansas State, and what was happening within that organization was it was very much a command and control, and lack of trust, lack of empowerment, and things were falling off. And with the data, we were able to connect it and come back, and they had created a story that just wasn't real, but nobody had the data to say, here's what's really going on. And to be able to get in there and understand that is tremendous. The other thing too, we think about that whole confirmation bias too. With that one, we're we often see change leaders who will just they'll do simple surveys, and they'll reach out, and what they'll do is it's really confirming. They'll look for answers that confirm what
Yeah.
their bias already
Yeah.
is. But it's so important from an AI perspective to leave it to the AI, and what the AI will do is they'll come up with the most common themes. They will understand bigger picture. Here's the biggest issue. Here's the next biggest issue, and then from there we can actually segment to see where the differences are. So, for example, if there is if if the if the biggest issue is lack of readiness or lack of understanding a process, we can actually dig in and segment in and say, here's actually what's happening, and here's where we've got to focus our energy. And it'll actually let us know from a positive to negative intention as well what we're seeing. So it's just fascinating. So it really, from a bias perspective, it it really forces team members and forces leaders to be able to rethink what they believe to be true. Because in a lot of cases it's we're operating from just so much of the information, but leveraging AI, we're getting a lot more insight so that um, we're able to make better choices with better information. But it's again, it's at one's peril to do that. I will say though, one risk we saw is uh, we were working with one organization, and they'd been working with one of the big four consulting groups for years, and they decided, okay, we're gonna make a switch. And then they started to get information from AI, and suddenly in AI we trust. And they started to ignore some of the institutional knowledge that they had from people that have been working in the company for all of those years,
Yeah.
just from here's what the data is telling me. So it's really important that we understand what the data is saying, but we also understand from an organizational context perspective what it means, so that we can really use it effectively.
Okay, so very interesting. So we have one of the questions that you want to hit on, and I'm going to build up on that. So Munshi is saying that how AI can help in change management activities. And obviously AI has many different layers as well. One of the most popular one in 2024 is the generative AI. And I don't know if you're able to utilize that. So my understanding based on your description, the way you guys are approaching this is going to be slightly more, what is that called? Prescriptive AI, I guess. Probably you are utilizing
Yeah.
that. These are going to be really data-driven insights. That is slightly older one. But I don't know, with the advancements in AI, are you able to do anything more than what you were able to do, let's say, 3 years back?
Oh yeah, it's night and day. It's night and day. When we had originally launched our first platform back in 2020, it was very limited in what we could do. And now what we're seeing is we have the ability to start to ingest data into AI. So for example, we can look and we can build change strategies and change plans, which might have taken 6, 8, 10 weeks to get that 60 or 70 page document, and those really robust change plans. We can look to have AI support us with that. So some of the inputs, we're able to ingest different project documentation, different charters, different plans, different visions. We're actually able to understand and ingest lessons learned from previous ERP implementations or previous transformations. So we're actually able to ingest that data. The other thing we're leveraging is the sentiment of everybody going through the change. And using all of that information, we're able to generate plans that are a lot more specific. We're able to have key themes and branding and ways to support using AI that builds upon that understanding of what people want and need. We're actually able to measure how ready people are over the course of a program, and be able to pivot in both project and change based on what we're seeing from a data, based on how engaged people are and how involved and where the risks are. We're actually able to see um, resistance before it starts to bubble up and become a problem. We can understand from AI um, where the problems will be to start to work through before they start to derail programs. So it's providing us an understanding of the risks. It's understanding of how to create training materials and education for people based on what they want and what they need, understanding where they currently are because of the data, as opposed to bringing people in who don't necessarily need something. It's really targeted. So there's a great opportunity to leverage AI. We're also using generative AI to be able to through different things like chatbots to be able to understand from an engagement and a support perspective. So thinking about going live, if we've one of the things we've got to do is get people prepared, and if we're using the data properly, we know that people are ready, and we know where there's holes if people aren't ready in certain spots. But to be able to give them a hands-on opportunity to type in somewhere on a screen, hey, I'm having some real issues. I'm having some real issues with understanding this, and to be able to walk them through the steps, as opposed to having that first line of support being another change agent or one of their peers. So it's a great question, and it's something that we're really seeing that's enhancing the role of the change manager, because we see change people being a little bit resistant to move forward with using new tools. Uh, but all this does is this enhances their role. This gives them this actually gives them a bigger seat at the table.
Very interesting. So we have some more questions. And by the way, guys, great questions. Keep them coming. If you have any stories that you might be able to share, then we might be able to provide more stories around that. So here, one more comment from Anshi. I would love to hear any specific use cases of how AI can help with change management activities. So I know, Tim, you had mentioned a little bit in terms of how you are doing this in gathering the data, but I don't know if you're going to have any specific stories that you might be able to share.
Yeah. There's one I'll share. It was a global SAP implementation that we were supporting, and they they were really concerned from a change management perspective around how to make sure that within each one of the countries affected, and part of this rollout, that it wouldn't be a brand new change exercise. So one of the things that they had seen in the past was somebody globally created a playbook and shared that playbook with each one of the countries that was going to go live eventually. And what would happen is each one of these countries would take that playbook, and they would manually start to create their own strategies and plans. What we were able to do was leveraging AI, creating that one strategy plan and playbook. We actually, with the AI and understanding sentiment and understanding the amount of change, we were able to have AI support us in actually generating specific playbooks for each one of the countries based on the way they worked. So ingesting that data based on what's previously worked, what people want and what they need, what change tactics are available within that specific country. And one of the things we were able to do is reduce the amount of time spent from a change perspective, upfront planning. We were able to reduce it by 60%, and actually get people focused on executing change, as opposed to building a bunch of plans that really didn't make it. And then from there, as we start to measure through the project, it's really amazing. We were able to actually see engagement, see resistance within each one of the countries, and then also across specific cross-functional areas, and be able to tailor change tactics and education based on that. And it's so it really is it is fascinating to be able to see how you can get an organization involved and engaged just by giving them data, and using their data on what they need and what they want. Because the last thing that somebody really cares about on an ERP project, they're already resistant because they know how to be successful in the current way. But if you're providing them some stuff that's just not hitting the mark, or just not addressing their needs, you're going to lose them. And if we know what they want and need, and can tailor those experiences, it's a fresh new world. And that's what we're seeing. But it's a shift it's a shift in how we, how we communicate, how we engage with people, and how we move projects forward.
Yeah, so very interesting. So I'm going to have a follow up on that. I'm trying to understand it myself, how this works for different organizations, to be completely honest. Okay. So one of the points that you had mentioned that you need the history, and obviously, if you have the historical data, you can analyze the trends. You can analyze a lot of different things, right? So number one thing is when you are dealing with companies like banks,
Yeah.
insurance, okay, they are practically an IT company, to be completely honest. Okay, they are doing a lot more IT projects, so they are going to have a lot more data, lot more history. Now, my problem with that data is that the ERP projects are slightly different. Okay, they are not so whatever made you successful for, I don't know, maybe for a product. Okay, that's going to have a very different impact on your organization than what an ERP is going to be. So they are not necessarily comparable, right? So there is a little problem there. So I don't know how you manage around that, how what you have seen companies manage around that. But the other problem that you are going to run into is, for example, let's say you have other companies who are not doing as many projects, so they are not going to have any data whatsoever. So you don't have any history. You are coming with a blank slate. And by the way, just to make the matter slightly more interesting, that executives that you are going to deal with, they are not going to have any experience doing these projects. They just don't know what they don't know. Okay, so how do you find this data? And if you don't have data, what can you do if you don't have data? I don't know what AI can do, I guess.
Well, I think the first thing, I think the first place to start is that importance of garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
So we need to know what data really is relevant. And sometimes, like you said, there isn't data from other programs. If there is, as appropriate, it's leveraging some of that, but also not putting a tremendous weight on it, depending on what it is. One of the things that we do often see from historical, if companies have tried to put in similar projects before
Yeah.
and they failed, there's some really good lessons learned, I'm
Yeah.
sure, that have been collected.
Yeah.
That can be a really good data point. As long as what was collected was honest. But the other thing too is when a project's getting started, there are specific, there's specific deliverables that are being created. There's a charter. There's an understanding of the vision of what this looks like, and how to be successful. So those are a couple pieces of relevant data to be included. But the biggest thing to start with is to start with sentiment. So is to start and give your employees that are going to go through the change, give them the opportunity to share uh, safely, so without worry. Give them the opportunity to share their sentiment about this project, about their area, about what the focus of this project is. Give them an opportunity to tell you about their concerns, tell you about what's going to stop them from being involved in supporting this project. Have them share with you what they need and what they want in order to get engaged. And the information that comes back from that is incredibly powerful. It's segmented down to a role level. So right away, from a change perspective, you know, you know, you know what's happening. You know where the risks are. You know what people want to hear and what they want to see. I'll give you one example. We were supporting a company, and it was a merger and acquisition. And a big part of that as well was they were going to be combining their ERPs. So moving from one company's ERP to the other, and while they were doing that, they were going to enhance, move from one release to a future release. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we know when a merger is announced and there's this much confusion is that right away, recruiters are calling. They're calling, hey, there's so much disruption there. Wouldn't it be a great time to leave? And we're hearing, we're hearing that people are really concerned, of course, during this time, and they want to be heard. And leaders don't know necessarily what to say to them. But if we understand the sentiment of what's really on their mind, what they're fearful of,
Yeah.
what they want to do, we've actually been able to take them from that place of, work to rule or gossip or whatever, to let's focus on our job, and let's actually let's actually become part of this process. And it's been tremendous. So when companies can actually understand sentiment and react to sentiment, it's really, really important.
So very interesting. So I'm gonna hit some more on the sentiment part, right? Because,
Yeah.
and I don't remember which book I read, but there was a little. It spoke about the importance of water cooler conversations. Okay, so basically,
Yeah.
the gist of the book was that you are never going to get the real story from people, like never. Okay, and the reason for that is because there are always going to be strings attached. People are afraid of a lot of different things, how they are going to be perceived, what is the context, how the communication is going to be fired back. So what you are thinking in your head, you are never going to be providing the real story, especially if that is going to be in the written form, right? For example, let's say right now you are in this podcast. I don't know whether you are enjoying this episode or not, whether you are liking me, but you are never going to say that because you are facing public at this point of time. You are worried about your own reputation in terms of what you have to say. So that's how most people are. They don't say what they are feeling in their head. But from the change perspective, the behavior that you are going to get is going to be deep down in their heart and their head, right?
Yeah.
So that is where the change lives, and that's what drives behavior. They are going to do what they are going to do. They are never going to say that. So how do you control that? Let's say if you were to capture this input, and for the most part, I think that's not going to happen because they are never going
Oh,
to give you the real insights, I guess.
we have been getting it. We actually have been getting it, but we have to do it from we have to do it from a little different place. So for us, it's extremely important that we get that sentiment. We know we're not going to. We know there's going to be some people who hold back, but a big part of this is creating an awareness program about how this is different, why we need their data, how we're going to use their data, how their data is confidential, and how it's going to be protected and what will be shared. And from an AI perspective, we actually have filters that clear out, that clear out any information that would be identifying. We also have gone to lengths so that there's no identifying data that actually comes into the AI system. So um, you're so right when it comes to that fear, because people have seen it. People have heard in the past, oh yeah, you know this is confidential, my anonymity will be protected, and it's not true. And it they've also seen in focus groups where the people go into focus groups and they know that there's likely a plant, or somebody's going to go back to somebody based on, oh, do you know this person said this? So we have to create safe environments. We have to, and this has been a huge thing for us, is have a third party manage getting the sentiment and show people and demonstrate how it's going, how their information's going to be used, and also demonstrate to them that what's going to come back is key themes. So this is the theme, not the one off, because so many times companies spend so much time and effort focusing on that one off. Oh, okay. Oh, somebody said this. Oh, and it really triggered somebody, or there's somebody's bias. Let's deal with this. But if we've got the key themes and messages, we can actually get honest sentiment if and only if we create safe spaces for people and allow them to do it in such a way that they know, and it doesn't happen overnight. So we actually need to we actually need to go through a whole campaign to get people prepared, because otherwise you're right. You're going to end up with a bunch of people just saying yes, and that doesn't help anybody. But when you can get to people's lived experience, their sentiment, their fears, the heart of what's going through them to get them involved, and you can do that in an honest way, the results are incredible. And it is doable.
Very interesting. So we have some more comments that I'm gonna quickly scroll through. And I don't know if you're going to have any sort of feedback there. So I think Edward was asking, how does AI do it? And I think he had this comment on one of the previous comments, and maybe he's asking about the sentiment. Eduardo, if you have any sort of follow-ups on this, where this question came from, we'll touch that. So we have one more: from where AI get the information it feeds people. So I guess, I mean, he's talking about the data collection. So I'll go for some more questions here. What can AI do that people cannot? That's another question that he has. So maybe cover on these three. So I'll go one more time if you don't remember. So
Yeah.
this was the first one. How does AI do it? The second one was, from where AI get the information it feeds people, and what can AI do that people can't?
So how does AI do it? Well, on our end, we're using a combination of natural language processing, machine learning, predictive analytics. We're using generative AI that we've developed. So it's very, it's various tools that that it's ingesting. So I think, just without getting too technical, I don't want to go too deep there. And I think the second question was, where does AI get information?
It feeds people.
Okay, yeah. From where AI gets the information it feeds people. You know what? It is. It's getting it, as we talked about. It's getting it from various sources within the organization. It can get it from. It's going to get it from project documents that have been created, or program documents. It's going to get it from strategy documents. Also depending, and there's some organizations that are okay with it. There's some organizations that are not. But a lot of times too, we can get data from Teams and from email, and just ingesting that information and understanding some of the key themes. So not doing it from a place of, oh, this person said this thing about this person. No, it's really about understanding what key themes, what's on people's mind, what are they concerned with, what do they want, what challenges are they having. The other part is getting information, sentiment based, from people. So doing AI enabled and AI generated surveys, but doing it with that campaign where we can get their honest insights, and they understand that it completely is anonymous, and that here's how their data will be used, here's how it'll come back as themes and topics. We're also able to do it from different education and training sessions, using the transcripts and seeing some of what the key themes and key messages are. So it's really making sure that we're providing the AI with good material, great insights, because the amount of data that we can get is tremendous. The next question was all about
what
people,
can AI do that people can't?
Oh, what can it do? Well, one of the biggest things that AI can do is ingest a ton of data.
Yep.
The more data, the better. So one of the other things too is we're limited in change resource always, and it can actually help so that the change person's actually focused on more strategic things, as opposed to a lot of the mundane things that AI can quickly do, or can be automated through AI. So we're optimizing that use of limited change resources. It can also identify for a change person where to focus their energies, because there's only so much information that a change manager has at their fingertips. Also, what it can do is it can segment. It can understand different patterns within data. It can see where those actionable insights are, and it can help with some informed strategies, enhancing stakeholder engagement. The other thing too is one of the things, and we've seen this on projects, and it's incredibly valuable, is we can have proactive change strategies.
Yeah.
So one of the things coming from that is we're going to know where the risks are. We're going to know where resistance is coming from before it actually starts to cause problems on projects, and actually get ahead of it. So it allows us to get ahead of some of the issues on a project and be proactive, and um, it's giving better data and better insights to change people and to projects. So it's an enabler for people. It's an enabler for change people to elevate their role.
Yeah, so very interesting. And I think we have the next question, and I'm going to provide some colors from my perspective. I'm going to help you, Jim. Typically, I'm not sold on any tool and technology, but I can see some benefits here. Okay. So, here, Eduardo, when you are talking about organizational readiness assessment, if you are doing this manually, you are not necessarily utilizing a tool, then you are simply relying on the information that you have on your fingertips. But in this case, what they are doing is they are literally probing into Teams and emails and getting the sentiment from there. And by the way, I would be concerned about this approach as well if they were knowing who is talking about that. So in their case, they are anonymizing that information, and that's what is going to build a little bit of trust that, I mean, they are not being sort of monitored, I guess, but you need that insight, and that's where the data is coming from. So I don't know, Jim, if you have anything else to add there.
Yeah, and I'm with you with organizational readiness assessments. I had a situation, oh gosh, it was 20 years ago, where a leader said to me, "Hey, how do we know that people are ready?" And manually, we went and we assessed the readiness of people, and we asked specific targeted comments, and we had leaders do that as well. But here what we can do is we can start to actually measure engagement and measure readiness from the start, and we can get further ahead with it, and we can dig into specific segments and be able to see where people are involved and engaged, where there's risks. We can actually target specific roles. So we may you may see that a certain department is overall is doing great, but when we dig in, we may see that there's a few people on that team that really need some help, and to be able to provide that back to their people manager and help and support that person, and we wouldn't have a view to it previously.
Yeah, no, great point. So we'll cover some more questions. I mean, we don't have time to go over all of them. So Jason, thank you so much for joining. So he's asking, how can AI be effectively integrated into change management processes to enhance decision making, predict change impacts, and optimize change strategies for organizational success? I think this is a very similar question that other people have been asking. So I don't know, Tim, if you are going to have anything else there.
Yeah, it is a great question, and it's one that we've seen, and I think we've touched on a lot of it. It's really important to think about how you're going to leverage the limited resources you have within change, and how you're going to incorporate. We don't, from a change management perspective, we don't want change people to throw out the tools they've been using, uh, and the methods, because change people really know how to to move an organization forward. We're just giving better tools and better insights. So it's we need to be able to find ways to incorporate AI throughout the process. Really think about how we're going to utilize it, but also how do we enhance that role of the change leader, giving them better informations to make more informed decisions and utilize their time in a different way.
Okay, so very interesting. So we have one more comment here, from Nick. Nick, thank you so much for joining. And he is saying, "And fool with a simple tool like a hammer will continue to be a fool." And I have to agree with him. AI, as you said, Eduardo, is a tool. You need to build it, find the right people it's for, and train them on it. AI, because of computing power, can manage large data banks at greater speeds than people. Getting to the right decision quicker has its benefits: faster to market, cost savings, quicker pivot. So I'm gonna have to agree with the comments. Tim, anything to add there?
No, it's spot on. AI's enhancing the role of the change manager and the change leader. And you're so right. For years, people were sent on a three day change certification with no practicum. And then they were expected to, with these templates, to be able to transform an organization and to knock on a leader's door. And that wasn't realistic. We've got great change people who know their stuff. This is about giving them better insights and better tools, and strengthening them so that they can do their job more effectively. So great point, Nick.
Okay, amazing. So, I mean, we are coming close to our time right now, guys. By the way, all of the people in the audience, follow them. Amazing people. They are all part of the ERP community. And Tim, obviously, we need some sort of closing advice from your side, and how people can connect with you if they have any sort of follow-up question, if they want to learn about the tool that you are building, as well as if they have further questions, I guess, on your experiences.
Yeah, by all means, more than happy to engage, and I can be reached at tim@prompta.ai, and I'm also on LinkedIn actively, and just happy to happy to engage. And even for me, I was slow to jump into this, but back in 2017, I had a leader in New Jersey who said to me, "We love the work that you're doing from a change perspective. We're using great data across our business. Why aren't we for change?" And it was a great call out. It was, we really need to think, and we need to be innovative. And as change leaders, we need to use some great tools in order to enhance our toolkit.
Okay, amazing insights there. So, Tim, and my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be that the more insights and the more tool that you are going to have, the more effective you can be. And my understanding based on this conversation is that the tool is not necessarily going to be replacement of change manager or people. You still need to do things, but I mean, this is going to be another tool in your toolbox that you should be utilizing to be more effective in gathering the sentiment and gathering the insight. So on that note, Tim, I just want to thank you for your time. This was a powerful episode.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again, and thanks everybody that joined, and looking forward to doing it again.
Amazing. So that's a wrap, guys. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our podcast series. We'll come back on next Friday. I think we are interviewing another CEO from the e-commerce community. So that's going to be a very interesting conversation as well. So I'll see you all next week. Stay tuned for more announcements.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.